Okay, so literal equations, lesson 2.5, it's basically an equation using letters, substituting in values sometimes, rearranging those letters all around, and sometimes without numbers. And so it gets a little bit confusing. So we're gonna start out with a formula that's given, we're gonna plug in some numbers, and then we'll get to equations that only have letters. So in this case, we want to find the value of A for each equation when X is 2, Y is 5, and Z is -4. So I started writing here A equals 2, and then we have times Y squared. And since Y is 5, we're going to plug in 5 squared plus 4 times Z, and Z is -4. Once we get to this step, we are solving based on order of operations. Order of operation tells us that we need to do parentheses first. Now, we don't want to get these parentheses mixed up with terms, with parentheses that have two terms, such as this one right here. So these parentheses just represent multiplication. Yes.
Why do you have the exponent inside?
It really doesn't matter. You can have it inside or outside. So either one. Sometimes I do the other way. Okay. So we're going to move to exponents. So A equals 2 times 5 squared, which is 25, minus 4 times 4, or 4 times -4 is -16. And actually, you know what? It should probably be on the outside. And when we get to negative numbers, I'll explain that later. All right, next we go to multiplication and division in order from left to right. So we have multiplication here. 2 times 25 is 50. And then 50 minus 16 is 34. So when we get down to the bottom, A equals 34. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. We have A equals, and in parentheses, Y, which is 5, plus 2 times X, which is 2. All of that is going to be squared. Okay. Now remember, in order of operation, we go from we move from inner to outer. So we start with the innermost part of our equation and start moving out. So in this case, we have to multiply 2 times 4 first, or I'm sorry, 2 times 2 first. And we get 5 plus 4 squared. Now we finish what is in parentheses. 5 plus 4 is 9. And then 9 squared is 81. All right, what I would like for you to do now is go ahead and plug in the values into the next equation. And you end up with, okay, so we have X squared, which is 2 squared, plus Z squared, which is -4, all over X, which is 2. Now, you had a really good question about where the exponent goes. It does go on the outside of the parenthesis, because look at this right here. Whenever we have a negative, the negative goes on the inside, the exponent goes on the outside. So when you square -4, you're going to end up squaring -4 times -4, which will give you a positive. If the 2 were right outside of the 4, instead of outside of the parenthesis, it would be 4 times 4 is 16 times the negative, which would be -16, and then you get a completely different answer. And we did go over that in chapter 1 a little bit. So it's okay. All right, so the first thing that we're gonna do, when you have fractions like this, you always work the numerator separate from the denominator. So in this case, I am going to square 2, and it just so happens that I can also square -4 at the same time. Okay, so I'm doing my exponents first. So A equals 4 plus 16 all over 2. Okay. Then I go ahead and add what's in the numerator. 16 plus 4 is 20 over 2. And then my final answer would be A equals 20 divided by 2, which is 10. Okay. So any questions about plugging values into equations and solving? All right, let's move on to the distance formula. So the directions say to isolate the indicated subject in each literal equation and then solve. I'm gonna show you how to isolate the variable that we need. And then we're gonna solve, but you don't always have to do it this way. So it says, so D in our distance formula stands for the distance, R stands for the rate, and T stands for the time. Okay, so it says between 2 stops, a train traveled a distance of 10 kilometers. That tells me right there that 10 is my distance. So when I plug 10 into the formula, it will go where the D is. At an average speed of 40 kilometers per hour. Speed is rate. Okay, otherwise it would say so many hours or so many minutes. So 40 represents our rate. Okay. How much time? Time is what you're looking for. Okay, so how much time, it should say, did it take the train to travel between the stops? Or it says find how much time it took. Okay, I read that wrong. So I'm going to write out my formula here. D equals rate times time. Okay, and I'm going to plug in what I know and solve for what it's asking, which is time. So I'm going to plug in my distance of 10. I'm now going to plug in my rate of 40. And I don't know what time is, so I just leave that alone. Okay. All right, so then we go ahead and solve this. So we're going to divide by 40. Divide by 40. And this is going to be interesting. We get 1/4 equals T. Okay. So what does this represent? Our time here is time in minutes. So if I think, or I'm sorry, time is hours. So if I think of a quarter of an hour, what is a quarter of an hour? 15 minutes. So my answer would be 15 minutes. Now, when we are dealing with word problems, you don't just end with 1/4 equals T. You have to put the unit there. And in this case, the unit is minutes. So I put 15 minutes. Okay. All right. And I don't put 1/4 minutes. Okay. That's not how we tell time. All right. Let's go down to example 5. Samantha drove her car to a town 126 miles away. So what does 126 miles represent in our formula? The distance. Yeah, it's distance. If the trip took 2.25 hours, that's 2 hours and 15 minutes. Hours represents time. What was her average speed in miles per hour? What did I say speed was? Rate. So we're looking for the rate. So let's write down our formula. always write down the formula that you're using, then plug in your numbers, okay? Writing down the formula is part of working on the problem, and if you don't write out the formula, points are deducted. So here we go, D equals rate times time. Our distance is 126. Our rate, we don't know what our rate is. And our time is 2.25, so rate times 2.25. But is this how we write out an equation? 2.25 R. This multiplication symbol and the decimal kind of get confusing. So we're gonna rewrite this as 126 equals 2.25 R, okay? And now we divide both sides by 2.25. And this is where you will want to use your calculator. Okay, so you guys can start using a calculator on this lesson. If you don't have one, that's okay. I'll put it up here. Just start bringing yours. You also have a calculator on your computer. All right, so I'm going to take 126 and I'm going to divide it by 2.25 and I get 56. What's my unit for 56? Yeah, MPH for miles per hour. And that would be my final answer. Don't forget the MPH. Okay. Any questions? Okay, I would like for you to annotate the next question, write down your formula, plug in your numbers, and then we're going to check to make sure you set it up correctly before we solve. Okay. When you are finished, go ahead and check to make sure you set that up correctly. And then, are there any questions about setting it up? Okay, so now I'm going to multiply this out. And he went 157.5 miles. That was the distance. And miles can be in, miles are usually in decimal form. Okay. So that is using the distance formula. All right, let's go ahead and move on to page 2. We are now going to use the interest rate formula. You are definitely with interest rate going to want to use your calculator. So if you don't have a calculator and you would like to take out your Chromebook, you may do that and use the calculator online, but make sure that you are just on the calculator. Okay, here we go. Interest, simple interest formula. I equals PRT. What do these stand for? I is interest, P is principal, R is rate, and T is time. What does all that mean? Okay, so say you want to start saving your money in an account that earns some interest. And what that means is you put money into a bank and actually the bank is paying you to keep your money in their account. Okay. And so say you have a summer job and you put $500 in the bank. 500 represents your principal. Principal is what you invest, or that's the amount you put in. The rate is the percentage of how much the bank is giving you by keeping your money in the bank. In this case, the first one is 1% per year, not a whole lot. Then the time is always represented by years. And so say they give you 6 months. 6 months is half a year. So you would have to change that 6 months to 0.5. Okay, 0.5 a year. So T is how long it's in the bank. And then I is the interest. How much at the end of those 5 years did the bank actually give you, or did your principal of $500 increase? So how much is it now? How much do you have in the bank now? Okay, so let's look at this first one. Determine the interest when your principal is 16,000, your rate is 1%, and your time is 5 years. Okay, so can somebody tell me, based on what you've learned in the past, what do we have to do with that percentage? Because we really can't multiply by a percent.
0.01.
Yeah, you turn it into a decimal, all right, and it becomes 0.01. So here's our formula. I equals PRT. Okay, we do not know our interest, so that stays I. Our principal is 16,000. Remember, our interest has to be in decimal form, so we move the decimal over twice and it becomes 0.01. So when I plug it into my equation, I plug it in as 0.01, and then I multiply that by the time. And what's easy about this is you don't have to do all the multiplication, plug that into your calculator, and you will get how much interest you accrued after 5 years. So let's plug that in. 16,000 times 0.01 times 5, and you earned $800. So make sure when you're doing interest, your unit is the dollar sign. Unless you want to write out dollars, but you don't have to. So this right here is your answer. Okay. Any questions? Okay. I would like for you to do the next two on your own. However, I want you to look at a couple of things. Remember that in interest, you're moving your decimal over to the left twice. So this is going to look different than the 0.01. So, and you're going to have to do that also. This is not a lot of interest right here. And then 18 months, you have to turn 18 months into years. So if I take 18 out of 12 months, which is 12 months is in a year, I get 1 1/2. So this is actually 1.5 years. So when you plug that in, make sure you do it that way. Okay, I am going to give you a couple minutes to do this, and then we'll come back and check the answers. And I will do this for you online also, work it out, and then we'll check our answers. Okay, so go ahead and check example 8 while I finish up example 9. Okay, so example 9, you don't earn a whole lot of money. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I'm writing for example 9. $1.12. Notice I did not round this because you haven't quite earned the full 13 cents yet. Okay. If you did round it, I would take it, but I don't, if you were to take your money out, you really don't have the 13 cents, you have the 12 cents. Okay. So are there any questions on problems like that? Okay, we're going to move to the word problems. The word problems are the same. You just need to be able to identify what is the principal, what is the rate, what is the interest, what is the time in the word problem. So here we go. A business venture has a simple interest rate of 1%. So they're telling us that this is 1%. If Hector wants to earn $900 in interest, okay, I is 900. In 3 years' time is 3 years, how much is the principal? So the principal is what we are looking for. So when you write out your formula, your principal will stay P. So let's write this out. I equals PRT. Now I'm gonna write in all my numbers, and my variable will go at the end. Okay. So my interest is 900. My principal, I don't know what that is. My rate is 1%, but remember, we're gonna change that to a decimal. We're gonna change it to 0.01. My time is 3 years, and then my principal goes at the end. I don't know what that is yet. Okay. So we're gonna multiply 0.01 times 3. Really don't need a calculator for that. And we get 900 equals 0.03p. Okay. And now we're gonna divide both sides by the 0.03. Now, should our principal be greater than our interest?
Yes.
Yes. So if we come up with a number that's smaller, we've done something wrong. So we're gonna take 900 divided by 0.03, and we get 30,000. What does that 30,000 represent? Besides principal, what does that mean?
The starting.
Yeah, that's how much they started with. That was how much they put into the bank to begin with. Okay, I would like for you to annotate example 11, write out your formula, plug in your values, and then we'll come back and check it. Okay, so this is what you should have gotten, but there's a problem with my final answer. Anyone want to tell me what it should be? How should rate be written?
2%.
Well, yeah, it needs to be written as a percent. So my answer is going to be 12%. 12%. There you go. Good. All right, let's move on to the next one. Now we're getting into a little bit of geometry, trying to remember some of the formulas. And some of those formulas, actually, all of them on here are going to be given to you, okay? So here we go. We're gonna write out the formula, plug in what we know, and move from there. So to find the area of a square, we're gonna find the area. So the area is what we're looking for. Given its side length, the formula A equals side square is used. Find the area of a square with a side length of 7. So the side, S, is 7 feet. Okay, so let's write down the formula that they give us here. A equals side squared. So A equals 7 squared. And A equals 49. But that is not my final answer. I need to add my units. So it's 49 feet squared. Okay, when you're dealing with area, and we could write this up here. Actually, yeah, area is in squared units. Volume is in cubed units. Perimeter has no units, really just one. What about if I'm looking for a side or a length or a base or a height? Do my units have an exponent? No, they don't. Okay. All right, let's move down to example 13 to find the circumference of a circle. We're finding circumference here. That is what we're looking for. Given its diameter, the formula C equals pi d is used. So that is the formula I know I'm going to use. C equals pi d. Find the diameter of a, oh, never mind. I needed to read that in full. Find the diameter. So diameter is what we're actually looking for. Of a circle with a circumference of 31.4 meters. Now, you could use pi at 3.14 for pi if you don't have a calculator. If you do, I'll show you how to do pi. Use pi on a calculator. All right, so we know that our circumference is 31.4. And then we have pi times the diameter. Okay. So in order to find the diameter, what do we have to do right now to rearrange this? Yeah. Well, we know, okay. Okay, we could plug in 3.14 for pi. But we need to isolate the d because that's what we're trying to find. So we're going to divide both sides by pi. And again, if you don't have a calculator, you can put 3.14. But I do have a calculator, so I'm going to show you what you do. Now, if you don't know where pi is on your calculator, I can show you how to do that. But we're going to do 31.4 divided by and find the pi symbol. Here's my pi symbol right here. And then press equal. Okay, now I am going to round to the nearest hundredths place. So the answer would be 9.99 is the diameter. Again, that's not my final answer though. It's in meters. So the diameter is 9.99 meters. Okay. Does anyone need help calculating that out? Let's just see how close we would have been if we would have taken 31.4 divided by 3.14. 10. So yeah, if we would have rounded up, it would have been 10. So very close. It's just using the actual pi symbol gives you more accuracy. Okay, let's move down to 14. Why don't you try setting this one up on your own? Okay, and then I'll set mine up and then you can check to see if you set it up correctly or if I set it up correctly. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video for this. Okay, so there was a mistake on this problem. Change feet to inches on both of these. And then this is how it should be set up. So once you set this up, you can go ahead and start solving. So volume equals pi times 36 times 2. And then you can plug this into your calculator. So pi times 36 times 2. And volume equals. Now notice this one said round to the nearest tenths place. So that's the place value you need to round it to. So this is going to be 226.2 inches cubed because we're talking about volume. Okay. Okay. Any questions on that one? All right. Yes. Huh?
Did you multiply by 2 as well?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
All right, do 15 on your own, the whole thing, and then we'll come back and check it. Okay, we're gonna go over this a bit because some of the variables, we may not know what they are or the numbers. So it says find the mass of an object. So mass is going to be what we're looking for. So we're looking for the M. If it's kinetic energy, so kinetic is our K, is 5,000. So 5,000 is going to go where the K is. And then it's 1/2 times M. We don't know what M is. And then it says that our velocity is 100 meters. So then we'll multiply this by 100 squared. Okay. So I can, let's see, I can go ahead and start solving it this way. I could do 100 squared divided by 2 if I wanted to. Okay, or you can multiply it by 0.5. So when I take 10,000 times 0.5, I get 5,000. So 5,000 equals 5,000 M. And then we just divide both sides by 5,000. So our answer is, no, it should be 1. So the mass, okay, did you do 100 squared gets you 10,000, right? And then 10,000 times 1/2 is 5,000. And then 5,000 divided by 5,000 is 1. Okay, so this would be our answer right here. Okay, let's go to page 4. I know, this is a lot all in one lesson. I'm so sorry. Okay. If we don't, we'll finish it on Friday. But here we go. We are now going to deal with equations by rearranging variables for a specific one. So you do not need your calculators anymore, so go ahead and put those away. Now, number 16 says to rearrange this equation to solve for H. So what that means is we need to isolate the H, get it by itself, okay? So M equals 60H. If I want to get H by itself, I have to get rid of that 60. So what am I going to do?
Divide.
We're going to divide because 60 and H are being multiplied together. So we do the inverse of that and we divide both sides by 60. Okay. So our answer is M over 60 equals H. We have now isolated H. We're done. There's no solving in this section. We're just rearranging. Okay. Let's look at 17. We want to solve for B. That means we need to isolate B, get it all by itself. So we have A equals 8B plus 5. What is the first thing we need to move over? Yeah, the 5. And since 5 is being added, we're going to do the opposite and we are going to subtract it. Now this is a minus 5, not 5A. Okay, so when I write this, I get A minus 5 equals 8B. Is B isolated? No. So now we need to get rid of the 8. 8 and B are being multiplied. So what are we going to do with it? I heard it, divide by 8. And we're going to divide this whole thing by 8. Okay, so our final answer here is A minus 5 divided by 8 equals B. Now you could write it A over 8 minus 5 over 8 equals B, but you don't have to do that. Okay, I would just leave it like this right here. Okay, 18, rearrange this equation to solve for C. Now, yes.
It would be wrong to say 8, sorry, A over 8 minus 5, right?
Right. Oh, I'm glad you said that. Yes. The 8 is the denominator of the whole thing. Oh, the 8 is the denominator of the whole thing. So 8 goes underneath both of them. That was a great question. Okay, another way to write this is D equals 3/5 C. Now we have solved problems like that. We did that in our warm-up today. You should have done it in your quiz today. So if I were to write this out as D equals 3/5 C, what do I have to do to isolate that C?
Multiply by 5.
Yeah, you're multiplying by 5/3, which is the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 5/3 on this side and by 5/3 on this side. Okay. Now these cross simplify to 1. So we're left with C over here. And then this is 5 times D, which is 5D over 3. Or 5/3 D, whichever one. Okay, I would like for you to try 19 on your own. It's a combination of what we did in these other 3. So go ahead and try that one. I'm going to pause the video and then we will come back and check it. Okay, go ahead and check to see if you are doing it right or you got the right answer.
We're solving for E.
We're solving for E.
Oh, shnikes. Okay.
What is it?
Okay. H. We're dividing by H. So 2A over H equals B. Oh, that still looks like B. Okay. All right. We still have 3 minutes, so we're going to get as far as we can. And then at this point, you should be able to do the homework already.
Yes.
So we won't really need to finish the whole thing, but we are going to keep going. You should be able to do 24 because we did one like that already. Let's go ahead and do 21. P equals 2L plus 2W. We're solving for L. I better circle it so I make sure I solve for the right one. And this is the perimeter formula. So I'm going to go ahead and write this out. Okay. And we need to get rid of the 2W first. So we're going to subtract. Don't get your subtractions mixed up with your divisions. Okay. And we end up with P minus 2W equals 2L. And then we divide by 2. P minus 2W over 2 equals L. Now, some people might write this, simplify it a little bit, but for right now, let's just keep it like this. Okay, 20. Let's go to 23. I want to show you this one. This one's similar to a homework problem. Yeah. Yeah. So let's go to 23. It's asking us to isolate X here. So what we have to do is we have to get rid of the 2 minus Y. And when you do that, you're actually multiplying this whole thing by 2 minus Y. Okay. And then you're distributing your Z. Okay. So it's 2Z minus YZ equals X. You have one like that on the homework, so I want to make sure we get to that one. Okay, we are going to go ahead and go back up to example 22, and we're going to solve this one. This is wanting us to rearrange the equation for F, so we want to isolate that variable. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite the equation. Okay, sometimes people will distribute the 5/9, but we want to get rid of the 5/9 first. Okay, and then we're going to get rid of the -32. So again, we multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to squeeze that in right here. And we're going to do that on both sides. Okay, so when we multiply by the reciprocal here, we can cross simplify all of these and it becomes a 1. But we don't have to write that 1. So we end up with 9/5 C equals F minus 32. F is almost isolated. We just need to get rid of the -32. So we are going to add 32 to both sides. Okay. And our final answer is 9/5 C plus 32 equals F. And this is the Celsius and Fahrenheit equation. So if you want to determine the Celsius, you would use this form of the equation. If you want to determine Fahrenheit, you would use this form of the equation. Okay, let's do the last problem. So in this one, we're gonna isolate y. And again, we have a fraction there. And so remember, when we have fractions, we're gonna multiply by the reciprocal. So we have x equals 1/3 y z squared. So I am going to get rid of the 1/3 first by multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 3, or 3/1. And these simplify out. So I have 3x equals y times z squared. So we're still needing to isolate the y. So I'm going to get rid of z squared. And because these are being multiplied together, I'm going to divide by z squared. So my final answer is 3x over z squared equals y. And that 2 looks like a z, so I'm going to do that. All right. So this was a lengthy lesson with a lot of different examples, because sometimes these types of problems can be confusing, and we need a lot of practice in rearranging equations and substituting values into equations to determine the requested information. You'll do a lot of this in chemistry and physics as well, and algebra too. So that concludes our lesson 2.5.